What's up, everyone? Good morning and welcome back to Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. I am Kyle Nabors along with Sean Hammond. Friday morning, we're about a little more than 48 hours from kickoff between Bears and Bucks, Sean. Um, Looking forward to week 2 of the NFL. Week 1 was really sloppy. Ended up having a pretty good game last night on Thursday Night Football. I'm not sure if how much you get to see of that one.
You know what? I was out hanging out with my brother for the first time in a while, and we were not watching the game, unfortunately.
Well, listen, as much as we talk football, getting a chance to hang out with family and disconnect is
Yeah,
never a bad thing. But
this
I
training camp is crazy, man. It's
I
hard.
yeah, so I took a night shift last night, so editing, so I was in front of the TV watching the game, and it was, uh, it was a bit of a shit show, honestly, for the first half. Kirk Cousins turning the ball over left and right, but at the end of the day, it ended up being a pretty fun game. But here we sit with the Vikings at 0-2, man.
Yeah, that is, I don't think anybody expected them to get off to the start that they had last season and the record they had, the close wins that they were able to pull out. I mean, you can't really, that never carries over from one year to the next. It's always harder. They had a lot of things go their way last season, and
Yeah, they sure did.
they lose Dalvin Cook, and you got some guys, you're shuffling around on the defense. They've kind of been that overlooked team in the NFC North. I feel like nobody talked about them as much as the other three teams in the offseason, Kyle.
There was a lot of upside with the Lions. People were interested in Jordan Love and Justin Fields. So yeah, the Vikings did kind of go overlooked, and I don't think that's because anyone thought they were a bad team. It's just I think we knew what we were getting out of them. But I wanted to bring it up to start the show because I wanted to use it to kind of challenge the notion of early season, what we know about teams and what we expect from teams. Because now we sit with the Vikings at 0-2, and I feel like I've heard all week for anyone kind of dissecting this Bears matchup is that, oh, you have to beat Tampa Bay and the Bucks. Like they're starting Baker Mayfield, and like I think that's a dangerous assumption to make that the Bucks are bad after they beat the Vikings in Week 1, and to just assume that Baker Mayfield's going to stink.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't assume that based on what we saw in Week 1. I mean, that defense can still play, and we've how many times in the past have there been Bears teams where the defense is good and the quarterback play might be a little questionable? I thought he was solid in Week 1. He didn't really make mistakes, Baker Mayfield. So that's kind of what you need out of him is mistake free football. And yeah, this is not going to be an easy win for the Bears, especially going on the road, playing in that humid Florida weather down there. It's supposed to be about 90 degrees on Sunday.
That's brutal for
that's
football.
going to be a challenge in itself.
Well,
you can't understate that. That matters.
And so again, small sample size, it worked both way here. But like you were going back to the Baker talk, right? Like he was the number 1 overall pick, 5-6 years ago now.
Yeah.
We've seen it very recent and NFL circles. I think of Ryan Tannehill. You can think of Geno Smith heading out to Seattle and the success he's had there. Sometimes a change in scenery and just getting the right coaching staff around a guy. I'm not saying that all of a sudden he's going to be, he's that guy that we expected from the number 1 pick, but I also think we need to give it time. And I saw enough going back and watching that game with the Vikings to be like, like they have some tools on offense still. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, like they might be more competent than people are giving them credit for.
Yeah, and especially just beyond this Week 2 game too, you look at that division they're in, and it's very winnable. They have winnable games on the schedule, and like you can't overlook too, like when things went bad for Baker a couple years ago in Cleveland, like he was dealing with a serious shoulder injury, and that I'm sure had an effect.
And an absolute dysfunctional franchise at that.
Yeah, the situation was just all around bad. Odell Beckham and all that nonsense, and sometimes a new location, new team is good for a quarterback who's kind of been around the block a few times. And so far, so good for Baker Mayfield. But it's early, let's see. Let's give it a few weeks. Let's see if this Bears defense can do anything against these guys.
Yeah. Robert Phillips checking in this morning. Love this show. Always starts just as I'm finishing work early on a Friday over in the UK. Start the weekend with some Some Bears chat. Yeah. Always great to have you on,
It's
Robert.
happy hour over there.
Yeah, we set up the show. We try and do it in the mornings particularly on Fridays, because let's not kid ourselves. No one wants to work on a Friday morning. We know a lot of people are sitting around looking for a way to escape. So Bears talk is always good. Yeah, it's good for happy hour talk over in the UK. So great to have you on. If you are watching live this morning on YouTube or any of Shaw Local's Facebook pages, you can leave a comment and jump into the chat here. We do try and use that to guide the show. We appreciate it. If you are watching on YouTube, do us a favor and hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Everyone that does that, it helps other people find the show. It helps the YouTube algorithm say, hey, these guys know what they're talking about. We really don't, but it helps every
All
little
about
bit
making people think you do, Kyle.
Yeah. And of course, if you're watching this back later, you can leave a comment on the YouTube page. We do go back and look through those. Sean, so where do you want to start with this game?
Well, let's sort of rein things back in here and let's put the focus on the Bears.
Okay.
That was obviously a really disappointing week 1 game. We talked about that on Monday. We don't have to go over everything that went wrong. But it's all about how these guys respond. I think being in that locker room after the game, there was a little bit of shock. I don't, obviously it's a week 1 game. It's not like they lost a playoff game. But guys were surprised in that result. And I think guys were surprised in just how bad things got. And so you go in on Monday, you watch the film, players I've spoken to have said, like, the mood on Monday was not great, but then you get to Tuesday, you get to Wednesday, and you have to flip the script. They were out there on Thursday with the music blasting, having a good time and getting down to business at practice. So you like to see that they're putting that in the past. And that's great. That's all fun and games when you're in practice and there's no other opponent. But I want to see how these guys respond. I want to see how Luke Getsy approaches this game, especially against a Bucs team that is expected to blitz a lot. Are they going to have a similar game plan? From what he said yesterday, he seemed like he had a lot more issues with the execution than necessarily the game plan. And I wonder about that. Does that mean we're going to see something similar moving forward here in terms of the lateral movement and passes and all that? And then the defense, I mean,
well, hold on. I want to jump in there. There's a lot to unpack just there. So, let's go back to like practice early in the week. You talked about how the mood wasn't great on Monday and things kind of turned on Tuesday. I mean, let's start with that fact and tie it into coming into this week. The Bears, they have to perform, even if they don't win the game. Like, it was incredibly obvious to anyone that went back and watched that tape who was and who wasn't trying out there. I mean, Chase Claypool, that was hilarious. I mean, the lack of effort. Nate Davis looked lost at times out there. Lucas Patrick at times did not have a very good game. And when it's clear, particularly with Claypool and Nate Davis, when it's a clear effort thing and it's week 1, and you're everything that Matt Eberflus and his staff preach and hits, for things to go down the way they did, they cannot have a repeat this weekend. Absolutely not. Things are going to go off the rails really quick if they come out flat again.
Yeah, and talking specifically about those two guys, about Claypool and Nate Davis, when I watch the film, I don't necessarily agree that it was an effort thing with Nate Davis. I honestly think the guy hasn't practiced and he doesn't know who he's supposed to be blocking on certain plays out there. You watch the tape and it's like,
well, that's even worse on the coaching staff. And then why is he out there? I mean,
he looked like a guy who has not practiced. Frankly, he looked like a guy who has not practiced, and he hasn't. He didn't until like a week before the season. And then with Claypool, I mean, Claypool, it looks a lot worse. It looks like he's not interested in blocking. And so with Matt Eberflus, with his coaching staff, with the hits principle, all that stuff, I want to see if he comes out and is putting in the effort next week. And if not, what are the consequences going to be? Because you can talk about, hustle, intensity, takeaways, and smarts all you want. But if you're not holding guys to any standards, then that's going to be a problem.
Well, here I get the question stemming from that. Then is Flus willing to risk putting Claypool in the game? Then, like after that effort coming off the season, like Chase Claypool's in a contract year. This guy needs to perform.
He
He did
called
not.
this in July. He called this the biggest year of my life.
Right. And then you come out and give that effort week one. If you're Matt Eberflus, the locker room can't take you seriously if you trot Chase Claypool out there again this week and it happens again. So I'm not saying like you make Chase Claypool inactive. Um, but that is definitely like I don't know. I'm not in the locker room to know, or in Matt Eberflus's head to know. Like,
Mhm.
do they feel they can get this guy to do the job that they need him to do? Like, what's it going to take essentially?
Yeah, and we were talking with the offensive assistant coaches on Thursday night before we left the building, and Tyke Tolbert, the wide receivers coach, you could tell like during our interview with him that there were some things that we kind of asked him like, how do you get through to a guy like that who's maybe you know a tough nut to crack, so to speak. And Tyke was saying like he's got some ways he knows how to motivate Chase and how to talk to him in ways that will help him respond positively. And you would hope your coach does that. That's why you hire these guys. But yeah, like if it's not better this week, that is a serious problem. And everybody else, I mean, the tape doesn't lie. Like everybody else on the team saw the effort that he put in last week. And maybe that's the fire that he needs. Like maybe that's exactly what Chase Claypool needs to see and hear in order to turn this thing around.
Shaw Locals Bears Insider Podcast is sponsored by Ken Nelson Auto Group, proudly serving the Sauk Valley area for over 55 years. Ken Nelson Auto Group offers 10 new vehicle franchises in one convenient location right here in Dixon, Illinois. Shop a great selection of new and pre-owned vehicles at KenNelsonAuto.com. Yeah, Sean. Moving on to what we expect scheme-wise from the Bears on Sunday, they're going to be a little more aggressive. I think there's no doubt about that. I mean, Justin Fields himself talked about he needs to be more aggressive. And you go back and watch the tape. Yeah, there were a lot of play calls that were, quick hitters behind the line of
Hmm.
scrimmage, but there were also opportunities to move that ball downfield that Justin passed up. He was not aggressive enough in week one. And, I guess where I'm going here is now we go back and evaluate everything, having watched the tape several times. How much of it was Luke Getsy's scheme? How much of it
Hmm.
was the poor execution of the wide receivers and the offensive line? And how much of it was Justin not taking advantage of the throws when they were there?
Yeah, I mean, it is a combination of all those things. There certainly were throws out there for Justin to make. I think he will tell you that. He said he played too conservatively, in his opinion. Um, and at the same time, there were some instances where you got wide receivers in the same area, and you got obviously the blocking up front didn't always help things in pass protection, and so they kind of have issues everywhere. And I get what they're saying in terms of like it was a sloppy week one. Like I definitely see that, but um,
It was a sloppy week one for
it
everyone.
was a sloppy week one for everyone. And so
Right.
so how do when you have a quarterback that's coming out and saying I was too conservative, okay, how do you find that balance of pushing the ball downfield versus maybe trying to do too much? And I think any NFL coach will tell you it's always going to kind of come down to the game plan. They don't really look at it as aggressive or not aggressive. They really do look at every single week as a different opportunity, a different opponent. And you're looking at a Bucks team that's going to blitz a lot. They blitzed a lot against Kirk Cousins last week. I think that means they're going to try to get Justin to get the ball out quickly. That's the easiest way to beat those blitzes is to get the ball out fast.
Yeah, Tampa is going to bring a lot of pressure. Robert Phillips checking in with a comment here. Seems Justin is a massive confident player, and for some reason he's not pulling the trigger. Had hoped this was behind him. Yeah, I agree with you, Robert. I mean, coming into the year, that was all the talk, right? Was Justin being able to identify when there are plays to be made and using that explosiveness, that cannon of an arm that he has, those playmaking abilities to take advantage of it. Again, the Bears have to put him in a better position to have more opportunities, but he also has to be more aggressive. There was a play floating around. I think Matt Bowen retweeted it at some point this week of essentially DJ Moore running probably a 15-yard deep out route to the sideline, and
toward the left sideline, right?
Yeah, to the left sideline. He came wide open, and Justin just essentially he came off it too quick and took the check down underneath. And now at this point of Justin Fields' maturation as an NFL quarterback, he has to anticipate that throw is open, make it, and let your guy go make a play.
The anticipation throws have to improve. There has to be more of that if you're going to be a successful passing attack in the NFL. I mean, NFL Open is different from college Open, is different from high school Open. Like, these windows are small, and you got to be on that same page with your wide receivers. Not that he isn't with DJ Moore. I think he and DJ Moore have a pretty good connection, as well a connection as they could for the short amount of time that they've played together. I think you did kind of see in that game that he and Darnell Mooney are still really, really have that connection going as well. And yeah, like he's got to make those types of throws if he wants to take that next step. And Kyle, I like that you, or maybe it was our commenter talking about Justin being like building off that confidence. And I feel like when he was at his best last year, he was making good throws, but he was kind of building that off some of those good runs he had. That would get the entire sideline juiced up. Everyone would be like pumped after a Justin Fields 20-yard run or whatever. And you would just get that momentum and that confidence. And I feel like, I know they don't want him to run for 1,000 yards this year, but you can't just have a couple of design runs with this guy. He's too good not to keep running him in some fashion.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. A couple points to hit on, and I can tie it to anyone who watched the game last night. I think will get this well. I'm not a fan of Kirk Cousins as an NFL QB. Like, it's not a guy I would want to build my roster around, particularly when you have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. And you saw it last night. It's a double-edged sword. He turned the ball over in kind of hilarious fashion several times early. But he also, as a veteran quarterback last night, when his team got behind, there were times he was just whipping the ball up to Justin Jefferson and letting Justin Jefferson go make plays. Now, Justin Jefferson's he's a completely different beast than pretty much anyone else in the NFL.
Yeah, receiver, right? Few teams have a Justin Jefferson.
Right. Yeah. But with that being said, DJ Moore is you traded the number one pick in this draft for DJ Moore to be that role in your offense. So that's what we're talking about. That aggressiveness, get the ball to DJ Moore, anticipate throws, take chances. If Justin Fields throws an interception, whatever, he's going to have to learn to make those throws, and that's going to come with mistakes, but it's time to take the training wheels off. And if they have, and he's just not making those throws yet, that's really concerning.
Our buddy Mark Potash over at the Sun-Times was talking to me yesterday, and I can't take credit for this stat. He totally looked all this stuff up, but he was saying that the instances where DJ Moore, of course, has played with a ton of quarterbacks. He had 8 or 9 games where he had either a new quarterback or a new offensive coordinator, and the fewest number of targets in those games was 6, and the average was 7 or 8 or something like that. You got to throw the guy the ball. It's as simple as that. I mean, you traded the number 1 overall pick for this guy. Even he doesn't have to be Justin Jefferson. He's a different player than Justin Jefferson. Different size, totally different player. But you got to throw him the ball. I mean, he's your number 1. He's supposed to be your number 1. You just got to throw him the ball. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those classic cases where the Bears come out first drive of the game, first play of the game, and throw DJ Moore the ball just to make a point. I could totally see that.
Yeah. And so the other thing we were talking about there, the other point was about the design runs for Justin Fields. CJ Williams checking here. I'll throw this up. It says, is it possible that Fields doesn't want designed runs? I don't think that's the case, CJ. I've never had that kind of indication, right, Sean?
Even though Justin has said in the past that, he doesn't want to rush for 1,000 yards, and in saying that, he's meaning I want to be throwing the football.
Right.
He wants to pick up first downs and move the ball and score points. So he's going to do whatever they think they should do to move the ball.
Yeah, Robert checking it. Hurts did make a few fields like plays last night. Had some design runs snubbed out, and they went back to the ground game and ran it down there through running back. Yeah. The other thing, Robert, I appreciate you bringing up Hurts from last night. There was at least one instance I can think of during the second half where Philly needed to pick up the first down, kind of just to keep Minnesota at bay. And it was a designed run all the way to the right sideline. And essentially, they were like, hey, we need to pick up 6 yards. We're going to put our best athlete and let him go to the edge, and you have to race him to the side. And if you don't get there, he's going to turn the corner and get the first down. Linebacker didn't race out there. I can't remember which linebacker it was, but essentially got caught up in the shuffle. Jalen Hurts turns it up for an easy 8 yards. Like, that's what we're talking about with Justin Fields. Like, it doesn't have to be 10 to 15 times a game, but when you are in a situation like that,
Pick your spots. Yeah, pick your spots.
3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, those are perfect opportunities to utilize Justin's ability. Even if it's a bootleg where you're giving him half a field, 2 reads, right? Maybe it's Komet coming underneath and it's DJ Moore at that second. And if neither one is there on that bootleg, he pulls it and runs, tries to get the first down that way. Those are the type of things that I feel like would be best to incorporate Justin's explosiveness.
And so I don't know what to make of. I don't know what to expect from the Bucs. Obviously, they blitz a lot, and that's kind of their go-to thing this week. At the same time, if I'm looking at the Bears and I'm looking at Justin Fields, I feel like if I'm a defense, I'm going to sit back and make him make throws. Maybe that's not in their DNA, the Bucs. Maybe that's not what they want to do, and so they are going to blitz 40% of the time or whatever it was against the Vikings. But if I'm trying to defend him, I just don't want him to break free for a big run. You would take the short throws any day, I feel like.
Yeah, I don't think Tampa is going to sit back, and I disagree. I think that's the wrong tack for Justin Fields because he's such an athlete. If you give him time, I'd rather with the Bears' porous offensive line as well. I mean, you saw it several times.
I mean, yeah, you look at the O line and you see places you can attack.
So sure. the thing is, Justin had Lucas Patrick in his lap on several different plays last week. If you're going to be able to get inside pressure like that on blitzes, why not? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And Justin, unfortunately, so far has not shown the ability to recognize blitzes and beat them very often. I mean, that's one of the problems with his game so far.
And I know 2 years ago is like a different world in the NFL, but the last time they were down there in Tampa, things went really, really poorly. Different team, different coach, all that stuff. Tom Brady is on the other side, so that's all very different. But you just wonder, the Bears have not played well in Tampa. I think the last 3 games they've lost like 100-20 something if you add up all the scores.
They beat them. Didn't they beat them the year after Tampa won the Super Bowl?
They beat them at home. So they've fared well against them at home, but for whatever reason, the last 3 games in Tampa have been a real struggle.
Mike B checking in this morning. What's up, Mike? Last year, the entire offense was built around Fields running. Your entire offense cannot be that. The design runs this year need to be strategic and situational. Yeah, Mike, you saw that last year where they kind of switched up the offense after, what was it, Sean, about 6 weeks, and really started utilizing Fields, his legs a lot more. There's got to be a middle ground somewhere in between here, right?
I think there can be a middle ground. Yeah. And Mike's absolutely right. You got to pick your spots and you can't have that be your whole plan of attack. Now at the same time, I mean, the Bears were a really good running team last year. You'd like to see those running backs do a little bit more, help Justin out a little bit. You wonder with a blitz heavy defense, is Roschon Johnson going to be in there a little bit more? I'm sure some people in the chat want to talk about this.
I saw a question about Roschon earlier. I listen, we go back to when we were doing our work back in March, and the buzz had already started on Roschon, and then when the Bears made that pick, I think both of our eyes lit up.
Yeah.
And then seeing it in the second half come to fruition. the way he was running, the vision he had. I don't know if it's this week, but I do
Mhm,
think it's a matter of time
mhm,
until he is maybe dominating is too strong of a word,
mhm.
but I think it's going to be 60-20-20, something along those lines within a few weeks of Roshan Johnson as your lead back.
It wouldn't surprise me, and the reason I'm saying that this week is because I still believe he's their best pass blocking running back. I mean, I know Khalil Herbert has tried to improve. I just think Roshan's better in that situation. If you got a team that's blitzing a lot, now the problem with a rookie is, you got to know where the blitz is coming from. You got to know which guy you're supposed to block, and
Well,
sometimes,
and
yeah,
that's on your quarterback. I mean, your
yeah,
quarterback should be identifying where that blitz. I mean, hopefully you're working in tandem and talking to your running back.
right.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, part of that is on the quarterback being able to identify the blitzer and making sure that running back is picking up that free man.
But if I'm in a one-on-one situation, I got a linebacker coming at me, which Bears running back do I want to block him? I'm going to pick Roshan Johnson.
I mean, he certainly showed last week he is not afraid to take on contact.
And this isn't really uh, you know, on that same topic, but I thought one of my favorite plays, not favorite plays, that makes it sound bad, but on the pick six, Kyle, did you go back and watch that play?
Yeah,
That was like the anti Chase Claypool effort. It was like, I know Roshan didn't tackle the dude. Quay Walker picked off the pass. Roshan was right there. He dove into him, and it was like he hit a brick wall and fell down. But the thing I love is he got up and he chased him down from behind, by the goal line. And you look at the offensive line, and there's like three dudes just kind of standing there. Cole Kmet had a really bad effort on a tackle attempt, and it's like, this rookie is coming in here and he wants to play, man. Even if he might make a mistake or fail to bring the guy down at first, he's not going to just like stop playing.
no, yeah, he was a lot of fun to watch. CJ here saying I thought Bears had success running downhill and didn't do enough of that. Obviously, referring last week to last week against Green Bay. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you really noticed Roshan Johnson. I don't know that you noticed the other two backs as much. I thought Khalil Herbert had a nice, one of the few nice screen passes early in the game. He had a nice little like 14-yard gain or something. I do think, I don't know. What do you make of this like three-headed monster thing they got going on as far as the touches, Kyle? I mean, I don't know if you can that last with three guys. I feel like at some point that's got to solidify, and you got to have like a 1A, 1B type situation.
Yeah,
Just in terms of like getting guys like into the flow of the game, not necessarily because I don't think a guy can do it.
three guys, a three-person rotation is pretty tough. A two-back set, that's not surprising in modern day NFL. But I mean,
It's hard to spread around touches to three guys.
yeah, I don't know. And Khalil Herbert and Donta Foreman kind of fill the same role too.
I've kind of always thought that since they signed him. I mean, he's not a guy who Foreman isn't a guy who catches passes. He is a physical back.
I mean,
Probably,
I like him. I like him.
yeah, I
I
like him
mean,
too. Yeah, yeah, that's not a knock on him.
it just
I just think they're somewhat similar players.
well,
Herbert will run a little bit more north to south, but they
the
both kind of do that.
the thing is, like, you signed him before you knew you were going to get Roshan Johnson, and
Yeah, that's true.
obviously, so like
That's true.
there was a reason they picked him up. It's just now that you've had a chance to see what Roshan Johnson's ceiling potentially could be here,
Hmm.
this becomes a much different conversation, particularly when you
Hmm.
start talking about roster spots, how many, um, like how many wide receivers you're going to have active on game day, how this stuff with Chase Claypool is breaking down right now. Um, no, I mean, this week, like I said, I maybe 50-25-25 in favor of Roshan. I expect that they're going to use him a lot more than we saw in the first half last week.
I I hope they do. I'm not sold yet. I'm not sure that that's what they are gonna do this quickly. But I think they should. I mean, yeah, he's a physical dude and he wants to play. You can see that on the film.
Robert says if he wants to, when he says he,
Yeah.
Eberflus, if Eberflus wants to reward hits and punish lows, might be a few first team players having less snaps against Tampa. Robert, I know you mentioned Cole Kmet as someone who earned some loaves last week. He certainly did. I don't know if we're going to see less snaps for those guys though, but
You know,
there are plenty of loaves to hand out, I guess.
one thing about tight end is we had Robert Tunyon pop up on the injury report very late. He practiced all week, but then they, Saturday they sent an update that he had a back injury and was questionable. He only played a handful of snaps in that game. So, if he's healthy, that might be a reason to that Cole Kmet doesn't see quite as many snaps. But I do think that they want Cole out there the vast majority of the time.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of players that we could see get less snaps, and I don't really have any in mind. Like,
I know, again, talking to Tyke Tolbert last night, the wide receivers coach, another thing he mentioned was getting, he wanted to get Tyler Scott more snaps. And so obviously if you want to get a guy more snaps, you got to take away from somewhere. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe, DJ Moore, you want DJ Moore on the field, like pretty much 100% of the time, 99% of the time. But maybe that means a couple less snaps here and there for Claypool or Mooney.
how often was Mooney on the field last week? Do you remember offhand what his snap percentage was?
Let me pull that up here. Hold tight. Let me find that just to
All right.
I don't want to misspeak.
I will, as you do that, we got a comment from Derek, who's, I think, letting off a little steam with us this morning. He says, the Bears O-line is terrible. Our QB is not looking downfield. The D-line doesn't pressure the QB. Oh, and also the head coach and defensive coordinator are in sync with not blitzing. Tell me how they win a game. I'll handle this while you're looking.
Someone's
for
having
that.
a rough week.
Well, I mean, he's not wrong. Like,
Yeah.
based on what we saw in week one, Derek, I completely understand what you're saying. That was as brutal of an opener as you're going to see from the Chicago Bears. It might be the worst I've seen in my lifetime. I mean, certainly the worst I can recall. I've been thinking about it a bit this week. But the thing there is, it's 1 week, man. Like, the NFL, frankly, across the board was gross last week and last Sunday. It typically is for the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season because of the way just preseason and training camps are structured now. They're just not the same as they were even 10 years ago. Like, there are certainly many reasons to be concerned, but I think there's still a lot of reasons to think that this can be the team that we thought it would be, which would be an 8 or 9 win team, Sean.
They still have plenty of time to make adjustments. We saw them make adjustments last year. So that the head coach or the offensive coordinator isn't so hard-headed that they won't change the approach. And that should give you a little bit of hope that they can make some adjustments and figure out what they need to do to win football games. There's always that feeling out process of teams every season, teams come in with this game plan. This is what we want to be. This is what we want to do. And things change. If something's not working, you have to make adjustments. And we've seen that from the Bears. We've seen that from a million other teams across the league. It's frustrating being a fan.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I get it. As a White Sox fan, I can say I understand the angst of having your favorite team just look like a laughing stock.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back to the wide receiver snap distribution here, Kyle.
Yeah.
So we got DJ Moore, 92% of snaps. He did come out for a couple snaps in the red zone, and that was, we finally got a real explanation. Eberflus wouldn't say anything, which was dumb. But Tyke Tolbert was like, yeah, DJ Moore pulled himself out. He went to the trainer for a second. He was out for 2 snaps. Obviously, they want him on the field in the red zone. So he was out there 92%. Darnell Mooney was 84%. Chase Claypool 78%. And then Tyler Scott was 18%, 13 total snaps for Tyler Scott.
So if we expect to see Chase Claypool on the field less this week, I don't know if Tyler Scott did anything to warrant getting more snaps last week. He didn't play particularly well.
And that might just be a wide receiver coach plugging his guys. Yeah, he probably wants to get everybody more snaps, but there's only so many opportunities to go around.
Yeah.
I
mean, EQ's gonna be active this weekend, right?
I think they gotta have six. I think they gotta have 6 wide receivers active.
I think so too.
I don't know how you cannot, if you're gonna have that type of game plan, and you have a guy who you have raved about his perimeter blocking, you have to have him active, plain and simple. And I know that complicates things on special teams. That means you probably got one less DB. But I think they got to find a way to get him a jersey.
I don't know if having one less DB is a problem when you've because of the Kyler Gordon injury, you now have put Josh Blackwell into a starting role essentially. Like all you're doing is bringing up another guy from the practice squad. At that point, I think having a 6 wide receiver is more valuable than having is it Greg Stroman? Having someone like Greg Stroman,
defensive back,
active on game day.
That's a good point, Kyle. And yeah, unfortunately, Kyler, the hand injury is going to set him back at least 4 weeks. He's going on IR. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw that already. Josh Blackwell is that natural first guy to take that nickel spot. He also sat out practice on Thursday, though. So some questions there about what exactly that's going to look like. I wouldn't be shocked if Terrell Smith, the rookie 5th-round pick from Minnesota, is involved. I don't know what they're going to do if Blackwell is also sidelined.
I guess the question there with Terrell Smith is, do you think he would play the slot position or would Tyreek Stevenson kick inside?
That was another thing that was Tyreek was mentioning that as something that he could do. I feel like his size and his body type and the amount he's spent so much time focusing on that outside cornerback spot, I would be a little surprised if they did that.
Yeah. Why rip a rookie out of there where you've been training him up, and he actually performed pretty well in week 1, I felt like.
Yeah, I mean, the defense, things didn't go well in that second half for anybody really, but I thought Tyreek Stevenson had some moments in that game. You saw his physicality, especially early on.
Mike B does not like my idea of kicking Tyreek Stevenson inside. Stevenson kicking inside to nickel would also be a huge mistake. Stop moving multiple players to fix one problem. Yeah, being good friends with Mike, one of his pet peeves, and this is something that you've seen with the Bears on the offensive line, is you need to have enough depth in your organization to not have to move multiple guys around
people.
Yeah, every time there's an injury,
and
which is fair.
I think Josh Blackwell sat out yesterday. I believe it was a hamstring injury, if I recall. He did practice the day before, so I mean, hopefully he practices today on Friday, and it's not really an issue. You go with Josh Blackwell. I think that's the best case scenario here.
Mike B earlier had said if EQ St. Brown isn't active, it would be one of the most egregious mistakes this coaching staff could make. Having last week's game plan without St. Brown alone was really stupid. Yeah, it was. That was a great point from Adam Hogue. I think he was the first person I heard bring that up early in the week, and kind of caught steam from there. Yeah. It makes no sense.
And we asked Luke Getsy about this, and his answer was, the actives versus inactives ultimately comes down to Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus. They're going to take input from Getsy, from Alan Williams, from Richard Hightower, but ultimately it comes down to the head coach and the GM. They're making the final decisions on that. I imagine Luke Getsy probably wanted EQ to be active in that game.
I liked the fact that you brought up the head coach and the GM there, because, and this, we have no way to confirm it, but this kind of reeks of a situation of, we want our guys active. Hey, we gave up essentially a first round pick for Chase Claypool. Hey, Tyler Scott, 4th round pick, he's got to be out there too, which is never a good way to go. I'm just speculating here, but it certainly kind of feels that way because EQ is certainly a Luke Getsy guy. It goes back to his days in Green Bay.
Mhm.
And with that game plan, it doesn't make any. He had to have wanted him active. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Yeah, you're right, Kyle. I mean, when you brought a guy over from your previous place, you saw what he could do for a few years there in Green Bay as far as blocking ability. We know he's not like gonna catch a million balls and rack up yards, but as a blocker, he's a really, really valuable dude. If they have a similar game plan, I can't see how they don't have him active. I kind of feel like we're going to get a similar game plan, Kyle. I'd be shocked if it's different in 1 week. Uh, but I guess we'll have to just kind of hold
Well,
out hope and see.
here's the thing: if you're the coaching staff and you truly believe that the game plan was fine and that you just need to execute better,
Why would you
then
change it? Yeah.
then why would you change it? Then stick to your conviction and go back out there and execute it. Um, you're gonna look really dumb though if you go out there and don't execute it again.
Yeah. And, I got to think that like Chase Claypool in that frame, 6'4", 238 pounds. How can that guy not block? You're going against, smaller DBs. Like, just go hit that guy. I, I
Ex-
really think that,
Extend your arms. It's
yeah,
not a difficult thing.
I really think that I really hope that this was kind of a wake up call in that regard as far as the blocking goes. Obviously, he wants to catch the football and make big plays, but he's got the body type. He should be able to do that no problem.
Robert asking here, Sean, didn't you see Claypool's good moments in preseason? How has this not translated to game day? Still injured? There was a lot of training camp talk, particularly early on before Chase got injured, that he
Mhm.
looked good.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely had some days where it wasn't like he was running deep balls to the end zone, but he was kind of like an extra tight end out there. You could run him up to the first down marker and give him a little space, throw him the ball, and it's a first down, and they were making it look easy. Um, yeah, I wonder about all the missed practice time. I think like with Nate Davis, I think that matters. I don't think that that's something you can just overlook. I know these guys are professionals, but it's one thing to know the playbook on paper. It's another thing to be able to go out there and do it. And I think all that missed practice time has probably added up a little bit for him. I don't, if he was still injured, he'd be on the injury report. So I don't think he's still injured. I think he was probably just dealing with some soft tissue, hamstring type things. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, he's you would think at this point that we would start to see something, Kyle. It's been it's getting close to a year. In 6 more weeks we'll be saying he's been on the Bears for a year or whatever, and you got to start seeing results at some point. And no catch is not a good way to start it off.
No, certainly not. Um, going into this game or coming into this weekend, trying to figure out here how where the expectations should be. I oddly think that the offense is going to rebound. Like I think they're going to work out. Now, listen, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect. I don't expect that, but
Mhm.
I expect them to actually win this game, and I expect the offense to look pretty good. My bigger concern is actually the defense. After seeing it last week, they got zero pass rush. Um, now you're down Kyler Gordon. Um, we were talking about Los earlier. I can give out several to Eddie Jackson last week. That was concerning. We've seen Eddie Jackson when motivated and when unmotivated, and I'm not saying that's a 1 week sample size, but there were several times in that game that I actively wondered what the hell Eddie Jackson was doing. Um, I'm a bit concerned about the defense moving forward, man.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect to be as concerned as I am. I didn't think that the Packers would just roll right through them. We have talked about and documented the issues going on up front. They still don't have good enough guys in the pass rush. We knew that coming in. That was apparent in the game, and it affects everything. Unfortunately, if you're not getting any pressure on Jordan Love, it doesn't really matter how good your secondary, how good your linebackers are. And so the Bears have to come up with ways to get some pressure on the quarterback. Baker Mayfield he can make mistakes. You just got to pressure him, just like any other quarterback. I am concerned, Kyle, as well. And I would think that Eddie Jackson would be one of those guys who's rock solid back there. Hopefully he rebounds and has a good couple of weeks stretch here moving forward. Um, but it's hard because it really wasn't like any one guy. It wasn't. There's not one
Well,
person you can point to.
it starts up front. If you can't get a pass rush, then the rest of your defense is going to look bad. And I mean, you saw it, and you're right. There across the board, there was blown coverages and blown assignments. You look at the Aaron
Mhm.
Jones touchdown, where I think it was TJ Edwards had Jones cross his face, where like out of position, like it just was not good. that's I guess that's all we can really say about it just wasn't good. And then, unlike the offense, like I just don't see a lot of immediate fixes.
I do think, having done this for several years now, I do think there's often a lot of those communication issues early in the season.
Yeah,
And you
sure.
would hope, particularly thinking about the secondary, you would hope that those get cleaned up over these next few weeks, as they get a little bit more into the season here. And like we said earlier, the practice time is so much more limited than it used to be in training camp, and one fewer preseason game, and a lot of these guys weren't even playing that much. You would hope that some of that communication stuff gets cleaned up.
CJ says Kyle sounds like Dan Hampton. I'm not sure if that is a compliment, but I'm going to take it as one because Dan is a badass, and so I'll take any comparison I can get to Dan Hampton. Um, Robert saying we can only get better. I like the
That's a
positivity.
positive. That's a
That's a
positive.
positive,
Only up
and
from here.
that's how listen, I know fans are gonna probably watch no matter what, but at the end of the day, like you guys can walk away. Like Sean and I are gonna be there for 17 games no matter what, and I'd much rather watch good football than what we had to endure on Sunday. I don't
Yeah,
know, like
absolutely.
another 3-win season or 4-win season just does not sound like a lot of fun.
I can't imagine that's the way this is going to go. I
I
gotta
can't
think
either.
they figure some things out and find ways to score points, and they're at least in football games. I still think this is going to be a team that wins, 7, 8 games, somewhere in that range. Uh, I would just be really shocked if we're sitting here at the end of the season and they only have 3 or 4.
I'm just throw this up here.
Yeah, I was looking
Mark
at
says,
that too.
yeah, I don't know if it's true or not, which is never a great sign, Mark. But I have heard that McCaskey and Kevin Warren met with Poles and Eberflus after the game. John, did you hear anything about that?
Here's what I'll say about that. I don't know if they met after the game. I don't know what exactly went down there, but I'll say this: Kevin Warren, from the day he stepped in, I mean, we did a ton of interviews with him, when he first got hired, and just picking his brain about his process and how involved he wants to be. He's a guy who sits down on Monday morning and watches the tape too. It's not his job to, it's not, well, it is his job to do that, but like, it's not like probably not number one priority for most CEOs at most companies. He's got the business side, but he wants to watch the film and give his thoughts to Ryan Poles. That he said that from day one. It wouldn't surprise me if they met, whether it was Sunday, Monday, whatever. I'm sure they're talking about it.
He is Kevin Warren is a
He's a
huge
football
effort.
guy.
Well, he's also a huge effort guy. I mean,
Yeah.
you talk about him when he got to Hallis Hall, the effort he made just to introduce himself to everyone in the building. Like
Mm-hmm.
he is very, very big into accountability. So I'm guessing a performance like that where you had players loafing,
Probably didn't
as
like
you did.
that.
He probably didn't enjoy that as his first game as
No.
CEO of the Chicago Bears. So I you know, I don't know if that'll be a weekly thing, but not surprised to hear that occurred, I guess.
I don't know if they meet every week. I don't know how often they meet, but I'm sure that Kevin Warren is, when he has thoughts, he's sending them to Ryan Poles. You can guarantee that.
All right, Sean, we got to get out of here, guys. But Sean, before we do, let's give some picks for this week. What are we thinking?
Oh man, I feel optimistic that the Bears can make some adjustments. You know, I feel bad that I was right when I picked the Packers last week. Everyone was on me for that. And I don't take any joy in that, but I just said, prove it to me. And I'm kind of at the same point. Like, prove it to me that you can win a football game. I'm going to take the Bucks. I think it's probably it's going to be I hope it's a close game. We said that last week. I don't know, like 27-23, something like that. I think the Bears can put some points up. I think it's a close game. I think the Bucks win.
I would like to think that we're not entering another just disaster period for this Chicago Bears franchise. And really, that requires a good performance this week, in my eyes. You need to show up for this game. You need to execute. I expect the Bears to have pride this week and really play better. I expect Justin Fields to have a good game. I'm taking the Bears to win 27-20.
All right.
And maybe that's just hoping beyond hope, but they can't allow for this game to get away from them. Even if they end up losing, they need to play really well in this one.
Would you, if they play well for 3 quarters, are you happy, or you got to see it all the way through?
I'm happy probably because
yeah,
it's only week 2 and I don't expect this to be a finished Bears team this year. I want Justin Fields to be able to finish off a game in the fourth quarter, unlike last year. But I'm more worried about that, let's say 5 or 6 weeks down the line. Right now, I just want them to play well.
Just to play well. Yeah.
Yeah. That's all we can ask right now. Just play well. You don't have to win the game. Just look like you're an NFL team making progress in a rebuild like you're supposed to.
I think a lot of Bears fans would take that this week.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you, everyone who joined us live this morning. If you are listening back to this, leave a comment on our YouTube page. It really helps other people find the show. You can also download the podcast version of this on anywhere you get podcasts nowadays. You can find this. Thank you again for Sean Hammond. I am Kyle Nabors. We'll talk to you guys next week.